Do you ever see a successful woman on your feed or in a magazine and think, wow, it must be nice to have it so easy? Well, think again. Behind that glossy cover or smiling face is a ton of hard work, countless failures, and endless learning experiences. I'm Rebecca Minkoff, and I'm here to tell you that success isn't a walk in the park. It takes grit, resilience, and a willingness to take risks. That's why I created Superwomen, a podcast that peels back the varnish and gets into the nitty-gritty of what it takes to make it as a woman in today's world. From luminaries and game changers to women you've never heard of but should, this podcast is here to inspire you to take your next leap, no matter how daunting it may seem. We'll explore the sacrifices these women have made, the highs and lows they've experienced, and the lessons they've learned along the way. So if you're ready to be inspired and learn from some of the most successful women out there, join me on Superwomen. Together, we'll uncover the stories behind the successes and prove that with hard work, determination, and a little bit of luck, anything is possible. Hey everyone, you're listening to Superwomen. Today's guest is Monique Rodriguez, the CEO and founder of Mielle Organics. Monique started Mielle Organics, a skin and hair company that uses natural ingredients to bring organic products to the market in her kitchen back in 2014. Today, the company's products are sold by national retailers in 87 countries across the world. In 2023, Monique's company was acquired by Procter & Gamble, and it was the largest exit for a Black founder in this space. We talk about how she managed to build her business, how keeping her faith has allowed her to have a North Star, and what it looks like to have future global expansion and entry into more products, as well as continuing to run her company day to day. Take a listen. Monique, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
So when I was diving into your story, it's not often that you hear about someone being in the nursing arena, then switching to hair care and beauty, and then having the exit that you've just had. So congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I'd love for you to tell me a little bit, what got you interested first in nursing? Then how did you sort of what was your aha moment to switch gears, and how did that start?
Yeah, no, great question. Because it is very rare to start in a field such as nursing and then pivot all the way into the business world, because it was very foreign to me. I became a nurse when I was like 22 years old. And when I grew up, that was what was instilled in me growing up as a kid. My mom was very traditional, and she taught me what she knew, and that was go to school, go to college, and find a decent, stable job and work that job until it's time for you to retire. And then you can collect your pension and enjoy life. And every time she would instill that in me, I knew that it was something that didn't sit well with me, because I'm like, you can't wait until you're like 60. Like, you need to enjoy life now as you're living and breathing each and every day. And a part of enjoying life is doing something that's very fulfilling for you. But when I was young, I didn't know that there was another route to success other than what my mom instilled in me. And so I did what she told me, and I became a nurse, and I started in labor and delivery, because I knew that I wanted to work with women, and I wanted to work in what you may say is kind of like a happier place in the nursing field, but not necessarily, because I worked at a high-risk hospital. So I did that for 5 years, and then I pivoted and I went to home health. And so I was working with patients in their homes by myself, giving them care, providing medications, et cetera. And I knew that when I first graduated from nursing, when I stepped on the nursing floor, I knew that I didn't want to do this for the rest of my life, because I wasn't fulfilled. Because my dreams and my passion ever since I was young was to always be in the beauty space. And the only way that I thought I can get into the beauty space was by becoming a model, because that's what I saw growing up. I saw women that were on billboards, on campaign, on, relaxer kit boxes. So that's what I thought was the route to get into the beauty space. So I would always ask my mom to take me to these different model calls, and I would audition to be like a hair model, but I never got selected. And she would say, it confirmed her thought of like, this is a once in a lifetime opportunity. This is not something that is sustainable. You need to go to school and have something that's more stable. So I kind of put my dreams to the wayside, and I kind of pursued my mom's dreams, because she wanted to be a nurse. And I realized that this is not something that I wanted to do. And it took for something tragic to happen to me to catapult me into really understanding my life's purpose and, walking and who God has called me to be. So in 2013, I went through a tragic loss with the loss of my son when I was 8 months pregnant. I had a high risk pregnancy. And unfortunately, because of the high risk, I had a uterine rupture and my son passed away. He was my third child. And of course, as you can imagine, like it was devastating for my husband and I, for our entire family. And the only thing that allowed me to overcome that was leaning in on my faith in God and, just truly trying to understand and wrap my head around like, why did I go through something like that? And I had to stop questioning and asking, why me? And asking God, what are you trying to show me? What are you trying to teach me from this? And number one, I knew it was to develop and deepen my relationship spiritually with God. And once I did that, God revealed to me my purpose. And it took me right back to that passion that I loved as a kid. And that was the beauty space and hair care. And so I looked at social media. Instagram was fairly new. And I looked at Instagram as a way to creatively like express myself, to use that as a distraction to get my mind off of what I was going through with my son. And me using social media allowed me to heal myself. It was a healing process. We were going to church, we were growing spiritually, and that allowed me to really open my mindset and say, you know what, I have to live life for me, because it was a very high risk pregnancy and my life was also at risk. And you only get one shot at life, and you have to do something that truly makes you happy. And so I decided to step out on faith. I started creating concoctions and mixtures of just different hair products. I would make like conditioners from different ingredients in my kitchen. And my light bulb moment was when women started asking to purchase my little mixtures that I was making in my kitchen, those homemade mixtures. And that was my aha moment where I said, I'm going to take this serious. I think that I'm onto something. I'm going to do my homework, do my due diligence, and find a chemist that can help me bring this idea to life. And that is the beginning of how Mielle was created.
Wow. So, how did you even know what to put together, for your hair, and what concoctions were working? Were you just blindly experimenting, or did you feel like you had some knowledge of what to put together?
Yeah, so it was a lot of trial and error. And I always tell people like don't despise small beginnings, and you don't discredit any part of your journey. And even though I'm no longer working in the nursing field, my science background has allowed me the opportunity and the education to know the chemistry component behind formulations. And it also allowed me the ability to research, because if any nurses are listening, nursing, you do a lot of research, and it allowed me to really dive deep into understanding like the science of hair, how the hair grows, really breaking down and understanding like the follicle and the human anatomy of the body and how the body works. So that gave me like a platform to like stand on and really be able to come up with like different ingredients and understanding how does this ingredient affect the body, how does this ingredient affect the hair follicle, and how does it actually work to mature the follicle so the hair can actually grow. So that was like my base of my foundation. And in addition to that, it was trial and error. So I would research and find different ingredients such as almond oil, peppermint oil, because peppermint oil is a stimulant to the hair follicles and it increases circulation to the scalp. And so those were some of like the basic ingredients that I would use in my homemade concoctions. I would use honey as a humectant because honey was very moisturizing to the hair. And then after doing a lot of that research, and I would experiment and try it on my own hair. And after messing up and doing a lot of things that, my hair turned out like one example is I put egg in a concoction, and I got in the shower and the egg cooked in my hair. And then I realized after doing more research and actually talking with the chemist, food molecules don't penetrate the hair shaft. You really have to use the chemistry component and extract the nutrients from different ingredients. And when you think of like egg as a protein, that's not the actual protein that our hair needs. Our hair needs amino acids. So just understanding that, but I had to go through the challenge,
trial and error.
the trial and error to learn that. So, partnering with the chemist helped me understand it more, but I was smart enough to know that I'm not a chemist, but I know how to hire people that are smarter than me in areas that I'm not to make this work.
Yeah. So you mentioned you were in your nursing career, you went through what is a tragic loss, which as a mother, I fully empathize with what you went through. You clung to your faith as you sort of pivoted into what your passion was. Do you feel that your connection to your faith and the ability to sort of say, I have to follow my dreams, life is short, made that pivot less scary? Or was it still scary to sort of say, I'm going out on my own, I'm going to try stuff in my kitchen and cross my fingers, see what happens? Like, talk to me through like how you had even the bravery to do that.
Yeah, I think when I look back in hindsight, was I scared? Was I doubtful? I believe, of course, I was. But I also think that the mindset that I was in at that moment in my life, it was like, if, the thinking that I had was like, okay, I've already been through something very traumatic. Like, if this fails, what's the worst? Like, I just go back to nursing. I just like my mind wasn't even thinking about failure. It was more so thinking about like, this is helping me.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't even look at it as like, I'm afraid or, I have to really show my bravery. It was like, listen, I'm going through what I'm going through. I don't want to be depressed. I have to be whole for my two daughters. And if this is what's helping me, then this is what I'm going to focus on.
Yep. So when did you see your first bite of success, and how long was it between starting it in your home, then getting a chemist, and sort of then other women were like, all right, we love this product.
Yeah. So I would say my first bite of success was the day that we launched,
Wow.
which was May 23rd, 2014. And, I didn't go into it with like any expectations. Like, of course, I knew I wanted it to be successful, like anybody that starts a new business. But I was just kind of like, okay, let's just see what happens. And the day that we launched, I had about maybe 100 bottles worth of inventory. And I knew that inventory, or at least I thought that the inventory was going to last me for a good couple of months, maybe 6 months or so, because I knew that, I didn't have a large following. I had no credibility. Nobody really knew who I was. And so I'm like, I'm just going to slow my roll. And, I bought enough inventory to last me to see how like the sales go. And the day that we launched, we sold out of every bottle the
Wow.
day that we launched. And it was kind of chaotic because now I'm like, okay, now what do? I don't have enough inventory to supply the next day orders and the next day orders because sometimes when you start a e-commerce platform or a business on e-commerce, you may have like ebbs and flows and one day you may have lots of sales and then the next day you may have no sales and the next day you may have one sale. But every single day from the day that we launched, we had a sale, like, and every day was growth. So it wasn't like an up and down. It was just kind of like
Straight up and
it was
vertical.
an upward trajectory. Yeah.
Yep.
And that's how I knew that day that, we were on to something. So I have like little moments of like aha successful moments. The day that we launched in Sally, which was a year and a half later after we launched a brand, which by the way, does not happen to a new startup brand to launch into retail. But because the brand had such great momentum and was on a great trajectory, the retailers were wanting a piece of that. The day that we launched in Sally, they started us in 95 stores because we're a small brand. And they're like, we just want to see how you guys do. And we posted it on social media that we were only in 95 stores. Now, Sally Beauty has about 3,000 stores chain wide. Our customers at that time went to every single Sally store asking for Mielle products to where the 95 stores that had our products sold out in like 2 hours.
Wow.
And that was where it got up to the Sally CEO of corporate. And she called our broker and she's like, whatever Mielle is doing on social media, please tell them to stop because it is causing chaos in our stores. Every store has sold out. The customers are harassing the store managers.
No way. Oh my God.
Yeah, seriously. And that was my other aha moment. Like, okay, yeah, this is real.
What do you attribute it to? Because there are brands, CPG brands, that launch all the time. And
Mhm.
some flop, some have like a hit, and then it goes down. Like, what do you think your secret sauce was in those early days?
Yeah, my secret sauce, obviously, as I mentioned earlier, is my faith, believing that I can achieve and that my brand was going to be successful. And then the second thing I would say is focusing on community building. Like, even to this day, we start with the consumer and we end with the consumer. Everything that we do is evolved around the consumer. We are consumer obsessed with our brand. And before I even had a product, I really focused on how do I engage and how do I connect with the community that I'm serving. And our motto is to overserve the underserved. In the natural textured hair care space, this consumer, her needs are not totally met. She feels like she's underserved. She feels like she's underrepresented in this space. She feels that no one is speaking to her. They're speaking at her, but no one's making her feel like she's inclusive of the conversation and really understanding her hair challenges. And that was a void that I was able to fill. I was a very relatable person. I was a brand CEO that connected with my consumers and showed my hair and showed my struggles and also showed the transition from having severely heat damaged hair to the turnaround of restoring my natural curls. And I educated the consumer on how to take care of her hair. And I was providing her with valuable information that was impactful to her life and her hair journey. And I focus on that before I introduce the product to her. And so I tell entrepreneurs all the time, you have to focus on building that connection and community, because when you have a community, you can then sell them whatever it is that you want to sell them, because people want to do business with who they know, who they like, and who they trust. And a part of building that trust is to focus on what are their needs and creating a solution to their problem.
I mean, it's beyond impressive. And I think, when you look back, you self-funded basically from 2014 to 2021.
Correct. Yes. No, 2020. I'm sorry, 2020.
2020. Okay. So in those 6 years of self-funding, I talk to a lot of entrepreneurs and they're always like, I got to raise money. I can't do it on my own. Raise money. I'm always like, please don't do it. Please don't raise money. Like, wait till you have product market fit. Wait till you have success. So 2 questions. What gave you the strength and courage to do it on your own for that time? And how did you afford that? Is my second question. Like, how did you maintain the growth before you took in $100 million, which is incredible?
Yeah.
Yeah. So talk me through that.
Yeah. So, as I look back, I wouldn't say it was necessarily by choice that, we were able to bootstrap the company all the way up until 2020. The problem is there wasn't a lot of opportunities to receive funding. I was a new brand. No one believed in us, right? No one was willing to.
Even with all the success you're having, no one believed in you.
No one, because we were a very new brand. Even when we went to the bank for a line of credit, we didn't receive a line of credit until about 2018. And that was a challenge. We had to fight to receive that line of credit because the banks didn't want to take that risk as a new brand. And I understand why as I look back, because we made a lot of mistakes with that line of credit. But, it's very hard to raise funds. And when we were going through that situation, the moment in time where we were using a line of credit incorrectly and we were not really understanding and paying attention to the financials, it caught up to us and we became unprofitable. And I always knew, I always remember what our CFO said to us at the time. He said, the best time to raise money is when you don't need the money, because you can have a lot of leverage and then you can go to the table and negotiate terms on your terms. And that always stuck with me. And so I would say us not raising funds was not by choice, because I probably would have raised funds, but I will look back and say that I'm glad that we didn't have that opportunity, because sometimes when you raise funds, you're not necessarily a good steward of the funds because you're spending money that's not yours. And on the flip side, I can say we became very resourceful because we didn't have money. It allowed us to be more scrappy. It allowed us to get out there and grind and figure out ways to continue to push the brand forward. And because we were all on e-commerce, our profit margins were pretty high at that time. So that profit allowed us to sustain where we were able to bootstrap and, reinvest that money into marketing. The problem was when we got into retail, that's when our profit margins started to shrink because obviously, the retailers, they take a cut. And so that's when we got into trouble because we were spending, 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 and we had the wrong people that were managing our books at that time. So that's why having the right people is very important. And they were booking trade spend and our marketing together when trade spending is something that is separate for the retailers. And because it was booked together, we thought that we had more money to spend on marketing than we did. And
Right.
that's where the issue happened because of the wrong people managing our books. And that's when we decided to go for our first raise, which was a seed round with New Voices, who invested in us at a very minority stake. And that allowed us to climb out of that hole and really get to a state of profitability that allowed us to then go for our Series A, which was with Berkshire Partners. And we raised that over $100 million, a Series A round, because now we were in a very profitable state. We didn't need the money. And I went back to what my CFO said years ago when we were in that challenging period: raise money when you don't need it. And so I told my husband, I said, I think it's time to raise because this is the trajectory of where I want to take the brand. And now is the time. And we were able to negotiate and dictate the terms, and which is why we were able to raise 9 figures and still maintain majority ownership.
Wow, that's incredible. So would you say that once you did that raise, again, I feel like I have so many questions. I don't want to forget them, but once you did that raise, what were some of the fundamental shifts within the company that you had to now, you have other people's money, it's in the business. I'm curious if you changed anything about how you ran things or who you hired or what struggles you didn't anticipate running into now, but then you do, because it's not like money comes and all your problems go away.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. So one of the shifts that we made immediately when we took on Berkshire's money, their capital, was we had to build a board. We didn't have a board, as we were running and operating the company for, the entire 6 years until we raised. And so as a part of that board, Berkshire Partners was half of the board, right? And so that was something that was new for us. I won't say that it was challenging because, I have to admit that they were really great partners and they were very helpful with helping us scale and helping us, eventually get to the stage where we wanted to be acquired. And they came on board and put together like a 3-year projection plan, a strategic plan of where we wanted to see the brand grow in the next 3 years. And, we kind of backed into that plan. So we backed into it by, bringing on the right people, the right C-suites. We had brought on a new CFO. We had brought on, a VP of operations. We hired a CMO. So some of the key hires that we didn't have that we needed in order to help take us to a different level, they were very instrumental in helping us bring in the right key people. So that was one of the things that was extremely helpful. They were also helpful with, helping us set infrastructure. We were kind of just growing, 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 and the company was growing faster than the infrastructure can support. So they brought in their expertise of helping to build the right infrastructure, which was really important for us to bring in that VP of operations and our CFO, because, that's basically the back end foundation of the business. We can be growing on the marketing side, but if, you lift up the hood and the infrastructure is not there, then you really don't have a brand. So they were very helpful in, helping us just build and actually scaled, and really building out our distribution strategy as well was something that was very key for us, and expanding abroad internationally. That was also something that they were very key with, helping us map out, like, what does that strategic plan look like over the next 3 years of helping us enter and tap into other key markets globally. And, even though we had that 3-year strategic plan, the partnership was really great and they were able to exit in 18 months. So from the time that, they came on board, they helped us get some things in order, and then they were able to exit 18 months later. So we thought that we were going to be with them for a while. And, because the company was just doing extremely well, we had a very early exit because of that.
So I'm curious, if you look back, right, you start making it in your kitchen, you cook egg in your hair, literally in the shower, to now having you were acquired by Procter and Gamble, and it was the largest exit ever for a Black female beauty founder.
Mm-hmm.
Just talk me through like the mental shift you've had to go through of those two things, because it's rare and it's incredible and it's exceptional, but I'm curious how you've shifted personally and professionally.
Yeah, no, that's a really great question because I always say like the foundation of success is your mindset. So, as I mentioned, even before we took on capital from New Voices Berkshire, I knew the path of where I wanted to go. I knew that I wanted the brand to be acquired by a big conglomerate such as P&G. I'm very big on affirmations. I'm very big on writing in my journal and writing the things down that I want to see happen for me personally and professionally. And so my goal was to have the brand acquired before my daughter graduated from high school. She's a senior because I really wanted to focus on, now I have college coming up and my youngest daughter is going into high school. And we built this brand. Basically, they've grown up with this brand. And I wanted to be able to show them this and to show them where they're very young and impressionable. And, for me personally, it has shifted the way that they think. And that for me is something that's so rewarding and so satisfying, so fulfilling because I see the impression that it's making on my two kids. And so personally, I feel that I was ready for this and I knew it and I believed it and I wrote it down. I spoke this. So I was just waiting for the opportunity and waiting for it to happen because, I'll tell you this, before we went into the process, we met with a few, strategic partners. And of course, we met with P&G. And this was before we even started the process. And I knew from the very moment that I met with the M&A guy from P&G, that P&G was going to be our partner. So I went home and I wrote down in my journal before any of this started, and I said, Mielle will be acquired by P&G. And then we entered into this process. Now, I didn't know that P&G was even going to be in the running. I had no idea. But because I feel like I manifested this, like I feel that, I prayed on this, I put it out before God, and He has blessed this brand to do something that was so historic. So I would say that I expected this because I know that I pray bold prayers and I know that God hears and He answers them. And so personally, it's just a confirmation of, this is exactly what I'm called to do. And I'm operating in my purpose and God's plan for my life. And He will continue to open up those doors, as long as I trust the process, because you can't have the promise without going through the process.
Yeah, I love it. And are you still there?
Yes. And so, of course, again, because we had a lot of leverage, we were able to negotiate terms on our behalf and what we wanted for the brand and the continuation of the legacy for the brand. And that was for Melvin and I to remain as CEO, COO, my husband, COO of the company. And we will continue to still push the vision and the brand forward. I'm still over product development, innovation, all creative marketing. My husband still runs operations, finance, logistics. We are literally still running and operating as if nothing has changed, and we like it that way.
How do you shift mentally with that? Because I feel like in all my fantasies of a big exit, I was like, and then I'm going to do this and I'm going to like work a little less and like all these things. And, how did you have the big exit and then just go, okay, good. I'm going to pretend like this didn't happen.
So I think that with a higher level of success, it comes a bigger responsibility. So my husband and I say this all the time, like we feel like the real work is just now starting.
Wow.
because especially in the Black community, when exits like this happen, it's not necessarily normal, which is why, in the Black community, we can tend to criticize brands that grow, build, and at some point exit because it's not normalized. And so our goal, number one, is to help change that narrative and to let our community know that this is a normal trajectory of businesses. You should build your brand with an exit strategy in mind, because the only way that you can curate generational wealth and wealth for your community is by exiting a business. It is very hard to build wealth while actually building a business because you have, your overhead, you have, everything that you have to run to operate the business, your cost of goods, your personnel. So you're always spending, right? As you are selling product. And so the only way to really do that is to exit a brand or exit your company. And with that exit, it has allowed us to do more for our community. We started our nonprofit, Mielle Cares, which focuses on creating a resilient mindset for tweens and teens, the youth. And we started with our old stomping grounds where Melvin and I went to high school with. We wanted to start with young kids because they are the future and they're the ones that's going to be taking over and running our country. And so we have to make sure that we're doing our part of pouring into them and making sure that they're mentally sound before we can set them up for a success. So I'm really passionate about like helping our teens and their mental abilities. So that's something that now that I've been able to exit, I can have the capacity to focus on how do I help my community? How do I help bring up the next generation? So that's one thing. And, now that we had the exit, it has allowed us to focus on, our family more, our kids. Like I said, my daughter's getting ready to go to college. My youngest daughter is going to high school. Now that we have more people in place, it has allowed me to have more capacity to focus on other things that, I couldn't necessarily focus on because I was so busy like in it running the company.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're building. And so it takes a lot of like energy and time to actually do that. So now that we have the right people in place, it has allowed us more freedom and flexibility. And where now our team can come to us and give us digestible pieces of information that we can make decisions versus us being in the intricate details of the day to day. Now you can give us an overview and now we have the capacity and the mindset to make quick decisions when it comes to the brand.
So I'm curious, I have a couple more questions and then I'll let you go. You mentioned you work with your husband. Has that been a blessing and a curse? Because I worked with my brother for the longest time. And so, it's always in the challenging times, it's challenging, good and bad. So I'm just curious, how have you guys made that work?
Yeah. So, I mean, we get that question all the time. So working with my husband, I would say is definitely a blessing. Is it easy? No. Do we always agree? No. Do we have arguments? Yes. But at the same time, what keeps us going is keeping God first and understanding the ultimate purpose and the vision. And that is continuing on the legacy. So our kids and their kids and their kids can know and understand what Mielle is, the legacy of Mielle, and knowing that their great great grandmother created something that was amazing and not just focus on beauty, but she focused on truly being impactful to the community that she serves. And so when we know like our bigger purpose and we know that like sometimes when we get into arguments, it's not about us. You have to take the ego out of it, take the selfishness out of it and focus on what is the ultimate purpose. And, maybe after a day or so of no talking to each other, we come back to each other and we realize like what we were arguing over or what we said to each other was not even worth it or it was so minute compared to our bigger purpose overall.
I love that. So 2024, 10-year anniversary.
Yeah.
What can you share? What are you planning? What's next?
So our 10-year anniversary, what I can share is that it's going to be enormous. I won't even just say big. It's going to be enormous. Like we have a lot of different activities and activations that we are truly going to wow, surprise, and delight our mavens and mavericks with the exciting things that we have coming up for our 10-year. And of course, we will never not do a 10-year without some amazing new products. So just stay tuned for the amazing goodness. I can't share exactly what those products are because it's always a surprise, but I will say that our mavens and our mavericks will definitely enjoy what we're cooking up.
Well, you've kept it mysterious, so I'm sure your community will be sitting there with bated breath. I would love my last question for you. Well, two last questions. What is a piece of advice you'd love to leave my listeners with, either that you learned the hard way or someone gave to you that was actually helpful? And then the second one is, what would we be surprised to know about you?
So a piece of advice that I would share with your listeners is number one, focus on purpose. Never be driven by money, profit. We always say purpose over profit. What you're doing is bigger than yourself. Focus on how can you solve a problem for the community that you're serving, and always focus on being solution based and being impactful to the lives, and how can you add value. If you can add value, if you can be impactful, that is something that's going to be long lasting and memorable, because I always say people will never forget how you made them feel. And if you can make people feel like you really care about them and you're purposeful in what you're doing, that's going to go a long way than if you just focus on, am I profitable this month? Yes, you want to be profitable as a company, but you really have to have a bigger purpose. And then what would somebody be surprised to know about me?
What would we be surprised to know about you? A fun fact, a hobby, a quirk, a bad habit?
I would say a bad habit that I have, or I would say a guilty pleasure, is I love watching reality TV, which I probably shouldn't. When I have the time.
Which show?
Real Housewives.
Oh, God, I knew
Probably
you were
all
going to
of
say
them.
that.
So that's like my guilty pleasure. And then I would say another like thing that people will be surprised to know. And I think, to say this because everyone's like, you're not an introvert, that I'm truly an introverted person by heart. And people are like, how are you an introvert? You're always talking to people. You're always out here in the public.
Yeah.
You're always on TV. But it's really because I force myself to do it, and I force myself to get out of my comfort zone. Because if I don't talk about my brand, who else is going to talk about it? So right. I have to force myself to do something that's bigger than myself. But naturally, I draw energy from just being by myself and my own thoughts and really just thinking. And that's where I'm the most creative.
I love it. Your story is so incredibly inspiring. Thank you for sharing it with me. And where can everyone buy and go harass stores for your product?
Yeah. So if you want to go harass any stores, it's any major retail, Sally's, Target, CVS, Walmart, HEB, depends on your location, but literally everywhere that you shop, you will be able to find Mielle products. And of course, on MielleOrganics.com, our website is our destination as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Monique.
Thank you.
I just wanted to thank you guys for listening to today's episode. I also want to ask you to rate and review the show wherever you listen to podcasts. I know it's a pain in the butt, but it actually helps with search and algorithms. So if you love this podcast, it is an easy way to get it more visible and out there. I also want you to follow me on Instagram at Rebecca Minkoff, at RM Superwomen, and be sure to check out my book, Fearless, The New Rules for Unlocking Creativity, Courage, and Success. Thank you again, and you will hear from me next week.